5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is the CTS podcast. My name's Jace. That's Henry.
We're back.
We're back, baby.
Upgraded setup.
New camera.
New camera.
New hat.
I don't think this is new.
Oh.
But new camera. So we'll see. Hopefully it works out good. I think it's going to look good. But if there's any weird video issues, that's why.
It'll be Henry's fault. Like it always is, actually.
Okay.
Anyways, sorry. The U.S. lost today.
Chase is not happy.
So, listen, a lot of things happen in politics. One thing that I want to start off on is really interesting. So, there are 7 House Republicans that have come out and said they will not vote for, I'm blanking on his name now, the House Minority Leader. McCarthy. They will not vote for him, which means if they stick to their word and all of the Democrats vote for the same guy, Hakeem Jeffries, who's the new minority leader, he would be Speaker of the House.
That'd be crazy.
Can you imagine? So McCarthy is going on like a speaking tour on all these media platforms and saying, "Hey, we have to keep the House." And you know, it's just funny because if you remember, you know, when Hillary Clinton was running against Bernie Sanders and in the years thereafter, you know, they were saying, "Oh, the Democrats, they have severe infighting," and we were probably saying it too, like, you know, the party's so split, but I mean, you look at the way that Nancy Pelosi ran that house. I mean, she always got the votes.
Yeah,
almost
it was
always.
There was not a lot of dissent.
No. So it'll be interesting to see how McCarthy does it. It'll be interesting to see if these Republicans vote for him.
Where are the 7? Yeah, where are the 7? Like, what
one of
side
them's
of
Matt Gaetz.
Oh,
and it's the other,
like the other crazy, like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Actually, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't on there.
Oh, weird. But people like that of that ilk,
right? So that was interesting. Another interesting thing that I was kind of looking into was, and this could be indicative of sort of the direction Congress is going as far as workers' rights. There was a vote that came up to afford a week of paid sick leave to railway workers.
Okay.
It would have cost the railway industry about $320 to $350 million a year, but they also reported record profits last year.
Yeah.
They're making insane money.
Yeah.
It passed the Senate overwhelmingly. There was like 25 or 35 senators that dissented, but I mean, it was like half Republican and half Democrat.
Yeah.
And the Republicans were like Ted Cruz. The Democrats included Bernie Sanders and like his gang.
Like some weird ones.
It's just interesting that I don't know, because Ted Cruz, you would think he's kind of a conventional conservative, you know, more geared towards company rights as opposed to workers' rights. But it's weird. So yeah, no, the bill did not pass. The bill did not pass.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But
it didn't pass?
It did not. No,
Oh,
it was a bill to afford workers a 1-week sick leave, and then they actually did pass a bill that forced them into a contract.
Oh, okay.
So that they can't strike. So
that's crazy. Yeah, it is weird on bills like that where they can have so many different things in them that, I mean, and I saw who was it? It was some Republican senator that was he was campaigning for like single issue bills. And it was because he was telling a story about some bill that he was on that was called like, I can't even remember what it was, but it was like, I think the joking example he gave was, it was like the Save the Puppies bill, but then as part of it, there was like $100 billion in spending on.
It's always like that.
Yeah.
There was an actual bill called End Homelessness or something like that, or Attack Poverty, that had, you know, billions of dollars going elsewhere.
Just random things.
And it's freaking bullcrap that they do that, because people that aren't into politics like we are, people that are less informed.
Well, you just don't realize, right? So you get the clickbait articles on CNN or whatever that are, like McCarthy like votes against a homelessness bill. It's like, oh well, like if you look into what it actually was, like it's a lot more nuanced.
Speaking of CNN, I was watching a Don Lemon sort of part of his show, and they were talking about the World Cup and how the men have already earned more money in the World Cup this year than the women have in the last 2 World Cups combined. And the sort of debate was, well, you had 3 women on the panel that were all saying, no, it's completely right and just because the women have increased the interest in the sport and what have you. And Don Lemon's like, no, the men bring in more money. They should get a bigger split. And Don Lemon's point was, I think their split should be the same. I think women should get the same cut of revenue as the men do. But right now, the women, it's essentially a 50-50 split. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
No, yeah, it's 1-to-1, right? Like,
do you think that's fair?
I think it's a weird one because I think, like, principally, I don't think there's, like, I don't know that like, that doesn't make sense to me, like, economically, like, is weird. Like, you'd never do that. But none of these players for the men's side that are on the national team, like, what they make from playing, like, internationally is, like, a fraction of their salary on the club teams.
And for the women, it's the opposite.
And for the women,
so opposite. By that logic, do you think it is fair?
I think it's good. I think it's a good thing. I don't, because it's not.
See, I wasn't expecting that answer.
I don't know. It's not, like, I don't think, like, logically it doesn't make sense if you're just like, okay, the men bring in, what, like $100 million and the women bring in $10 million. Does it make sense that they both get paid the same? Probably not. But at the same time, I think the way, like, the only way to grow the game is to, like, I think it helps to grow the game more if you split it evenly like that.
It's an interesting take. Yeah, I certainly don't. I don't agree. I think that as a general rule of thumb, the men should be getting paid more than the women. But with that being said, I'm not going to die on that hill.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if I agree with the 100% with, like, the 1-to-1 split, but I don't know if I think it's the worst thing if you, like, fudge it a little bit, like, change the balance a little bit so it's not, like, directly correlated to, okay, like, everyone gets 15% of the revenue and the men brought in, like, 20 times more than the women.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Did you see the stuff that was going on with Twitter yesterday? Elon Musk said he was, like, releasing a bunch of files about how Twitter conspired with DNC stuff? Members to censor articles about Hunter Biden's laptop. And
yeah, that was because they didn't, like, release all of it. I saw one thread of some, like, release stuff. I didn't look too deeply into it because it didn't feel, I couldn't tell if it was real. But there was some weird stuff in there that, if it's true, is not a good look for Twitter at all.
Well, and it makes you wonder if this was part of the reason that Elon Musk wanted to back out of the deal. I mean, when he came into Twitter, I have to imagine he just saw what a mess it was. I can't imagine he turns the company around.
There's no way. There's no way to make it profitable.
Not only not make it profitable, but I think it's actively going down the drain. I mean, I don't even think he can make it sustainable because, I mean, we've seen just in the past few weeks how the changes that he's put in place have just, I mean, we had this whole thing where people were changing their profile names to big companies and buying a check mark and losing companies billions of dollars in a single day. I mean, these are things that, in my opinion, Twitter could be held liable for. Unfortunately, they can't because of, I think it's Section 31 of whatever.
Yeah.
But if you aren't regulating your platform especially for stuff like that, I'm not even saying for free speech, because I actually agree with the idea that most of the speech should be allowed on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as stuff like just blatant fraud or
stuff's crazy to me.
It shouldn't be on there, right? So it's weird stuff. We'll see how it goes. It certainly hasn't been a good deal for him so far.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
The Twitter Blue thing is weird to me. Like, it's changed how I interact with Twitter, where I'm like, I see a verified post, like someone verified posting, and I'm like, not that like I automatically believe what they're saying, but it's like, it does feel more important.
It's more legitimate.
Yeah, it's more legitimate. And now it's like, oh, just random, like all the random like soccer fan pages that I follow are verified now because they paid $8 a month for Twitter Blue. And it's weird to me that there's no distinction. Like, I think there should be a distinction, like an actively visible distinction, because you can go in and click and check which is which, whether they paid for it or whether it's just like traditional verification, but you can't tell unless you go in and click on it. It's kind of weird from Twitter.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. Trying to think. In other news, Trump met with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes at Mar-a-Lago, which a lot of the big Republicans came out and just straight up condemned.
Just a really bad move.
It's a really bad move that was not popular, even amongst Republicans that you would think are otherwise really on Trump's side, like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. Not even really Mitch McConnell anymore. He's not really on Trump's side. But they all came out and they said Nick Fuentes he's a known anti-Semite, racist, white nationalist freak.
Yeah.
He's a freak. And they said that. And Trump came out and said, well, I didn't know I was meeting with him. And my counter to that is, you may not know.
You have to know.
A, you have to know, yes. Yeah. And B, even if, let's just assume that he's correct, you were still meeting with Kanye West after he went on a tirade of anti-Semitic remarks.
Yeah.
Right. The dinner was going to be with Kanye West. And so that's a really, really tough one to defend. And I think that the fact that the senators came out, especially Mitch McConnell, and said, this is just absolutely unacceptable, I think that they're poised to say, we're not. I think this was the first sign that they're not going to back him in 2024. I think that the Republicans see DeSantis as someone they can get behind, and we're already seeing them shift in that direction. Trump is not getting as favorable news coverage as he used to.
Well, he's not getting that much news coverage.
Yeah. And Ron DeSantis is just really popular in conservative outlets.
Yeah.
I mean, Ron DeSantis has, some of the more conservative ideals that Trump has in a more reasonable shell. And if he were to run against Biden, DeSantis will
I think he wins by a lot. Yeah. Because a lot of those people that were just like, well, I can't vote for Trump, so I'm going to vote for Biden, I think they vote for DeSantis.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. There's a lot of Democratic, sort of pundits that say Ron DeSantis would be unstoppable if you were to win the primary. I think the only person that could compete would be someone like Gavin Newsom.
Which he's gonna run for sure, right? Like, you don't run attack ads in Florida against DeSantis if you're not gonna run.
I think he'll run. The problem with Newsom, the problem that Newsom is going to have is I think he's going to win all of the states that Biden won, apart from, I don't think he'll win Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he wins Michigan. And I don't know if he wins Arizona.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of... It'll be such a close race. I mean, I can't even imagine how close that race is going to be. And obviously, when DeSantis runs, if DeSantis wins, it's very likely that the Republicans will take the Senate that year as well. So he'll have the total backing of Congress. It's going to be a crazy time. That's for sure.
that would be wild in like 4 years to flip from like 100% Democrat controlled to 100% Republican controlled.
Yeah. In other news, let's talk about SBF for a little bit. Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yeah. What a weird, like, the natural conclusion to kind of the crypto craze, right? Like, this is where it was always going.
Well, I think this is certainly like a nail in a coffin that's not going to be, I don't think crypto is going to come back as strong
in the way that it ever was.
It's hard to say. I just don't think a lot of investors are going to get into it until it's regulated.
Mm-hmm.
And the Federal Reserve is in a weird place now because a lot of crypto investors thought as soon as regulation comes, the price will tank.
We'll kill it, yeah.
But now it's kind of like people are pushing for regulation, so the Fed is stepping back from putting regulation in place.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. But, yeah, he committed fraud. He should be in prison, and right now he's in the Bahamas.
Yeah, he's on the run.
Declaring bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he should be in prison.
I mean, he stole like billions of dollars.
Not only he literally stole. He took funds from users and diverted those funds to Alameda creditors, which was a very, very, very high-risk hedge fund.
Yeah.
They were running a hedge fund that was very, very high risk. And when that went under, it caused the crypto exchange to go under as well.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like Martin Shkreli, who he's that famous pharmaceutical guy that's a total troll. He says that he'll go to prison for the rest of his life. Mark Cuban tends to think that he'll go to prison for the rest of his life.
Well, you can't just, it was not.
So the problem is with fraud and the DOJ would have to prove that he had intent to defraud users. So if you watch Sam Bankman-Fried's recent interviews, he kind of seems like this more like really nerdy, kind of doesn't understand, not quite socially aware.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming across that way. I'm sorry. You don't build $1 billion company and not know that what you're doing is illegal.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, like, well, even just bad practice, even if it's not, like, I think it probably should be illegal, but the whole stuff, like, giving personal loans of $500 million to, like, who was it? It was like this senior engineer at FTX, got a $500 million personal loan from the company. It's like, that's nothing other than, that's just 100% fraud.
Yeah, he committed fraud. So it's weird stuff. We'll see how it goes. I mean, the Coinbase CEO came out and they're asking him, would this ever happen with an exchange like Coinbase? And he was like, no, because we're publicly traded.
Mm-hmm.
All of our balance sheets have to be made public.
Yeah.
So, you can see that you can see that we have assets backing this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's probably going to take is, monthly financial statements being released by these exchanges if you want to trade on them. So this is more of an aside, but Kevin O'Leary is a paid spokesperson for FTX.
Yeah. And
just, can I use the word shill? I think I can.
Yeah, probably.
Just shilling for SBF. Shilling.
It is.
It's actually quite embarrassing. They asked him in an interview, would you work with SBF again? And he said, if it wasn't something crypto related, yeah, I probably would.
Yeah, it's just weird. Especially, I saw those interviews with him, and it's just, they just back off of it. There's a certain point that I feel like you have to cut your losses and just go, yeah, he duped me too. I didn't get it either. I didn't see it either, and I should have. And that's like my bad. But to kind of double down on it is a really weird, weird take
crazy.
From Mr. Wonderful there.
Pretty crazy, man.
Did you see? Hold on, one thing on the FTX stuff. Did you see the the weird banks that they had accounts with? That it's the third.
It's a shed and
it's like some shed in Wisconsin that they've got accounts of $300 million, and they've got 4 accounts and 3 of them are brand new in like the last 2 weeks. It's weird stuff. Certainly does not help your case if you're trying to say you're not defrauding your customers.
Yeah, pretty crazy. In other news, did you see the video of Joe Biden when he found out we beat Iran for soccer?
No.
So he was at an event, and there was one of his team was on the phone with someone, and someone's recording Biden. Yeah. And he's like, we won, confirm it. Yeah. And he was like, Mr. President, they won 1-0. And Biden like turns over and like immediately goes and like he's like, they did it. They beat Iran. And you could just kind of tell that he was taking it personal. Yeah. Like, is he into soccer? I guarantee he's not.
But that's pretty sick.
Because it's Iran. I mean,
that'd be like one of the coolest parts of being a president is you just like this, like when your national teams like win stuff would be pretty sick to be like, sweet, like these guys are like representing me pretty much. It's pretty cool, especially against Iran. But yeah, what else? Ukraine.
I got an interesting thing for you before I move on to that. The U.S. is reportedly going to ease sanctions on Venezuela for their oil.
Interesting.
In a move to rebuke OPEC, which Venezuela is in, but Venezuela kind of doesn't.
Not really.
You know that Venezuela has the most oil of any nation in the world. More than any nation in the world. More crude oil.
Oh, okay.
So more than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia. So, and the United States is the number 1 refiner of oil in the world. Yeah. And Venezuela has really sulfuric oil. So it's not as good of oil as they have in Saudi Arabia.
Not as high quality.
But it's cheaper for us to refine it and just get more oil. So there's talks that we'll strike a deal with
Venezuela
and Maduro.
They could use a win right now. It's been a rough few years for Venezuela. That could be nice.
The best. Oh, you know what we haven't talked about? Yeah. The freaking protests in China.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, crazy.
What protests in China?
I do not know, YouTube. Which ones?
So they're rioting on the streets of China. It's in rebuke of the COVID policies. Yeah. Did you hear about the BBC journalist that got detained and like beaten?
No.
BBC journalist that was in there reporting.
Yeah.
The police just came up. He was like, I'm pressed. They took him, beat him up, handcuffed him, detained him for hours, and then finally let him go.
Well, I mean, so much crazy stuff. Like, did you see the apartment complex that they had like bolted everyone in and it burnt down?
It's bad.
And a bunch of people died. I saw a video that was crazy. So people were all trying to get on a train to like leave. I don't know if they were leaving China or just leaving the city they were in. And you know they have like the COVID tracking thing, like where you've got like your QR codes, and if you have a green QR code, you're good to travel and stuff. Everyone in the crowd waiting to board their train, their QR codes turned like red simultaneously.
Really?
Simultaneously, every single one of them as they were waiting to board the train. Really wild stuff.
It's crazy. Yeah. I saw a video of Chinese police stopping Chinese citizens in the street and checking their phones to make sure they don't have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah.
Those are all banned.
Let me see if I can find this, because that video is like insane. Turn red. Yeah, I mean, and it literally, let's see. And all the protesters, yeah.
Let me see.
This is earlier. This is from June. But this China bank protest stopped by health code turning red. Like they just turned all their codes red.
No shot.
So you can't travel. You can't like go anywhere. I mean, they're literally welding doors shut.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty unreal.
Welding people's doors shut. It's bad news. And like all that, like the Apple factory. Did you see that?
I heard they got locked in.
Yeah.
Well, and did you hear that China came out and said that they had miscounted their population by 100 million people? And get this, you would think it's not a big deal. Yeah. They're such a big country, but the 100 million people were all like newborns, like children. So their
Do you think that's real?
Yeah, I think I saw it on like a pretty big news network.
Okay, because that seems weird. Or like I'm sure it's real. They're claiming that, but do you think it's true? Because one of the major concerns with China is they're like a pretty aging like their birth rate's like way too low. Like it's not sustainable because of like the one child policy and all that stuff. And so, do you think they're like trying to alleviate fears by just fabricating?
I'm trying to find where it was. I'm pretty sure I saw it on something pretty important. But
how do you miss 100 million newborns?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think I don't know if it was all newborns, but it was a very high percentage it was a lot of children. And the reason that it was a lot of children it was because they're now saying that China's population age is much older now, and they had misrepresented how bad the aging population was, because China's going through, a stage of development where their population is literally aging out.
Yeah.
And I read something that, a woman has, in order to maintain a society as far as population, a woman has to have on average 2.7 children. So China's right now is 0.7.
Yeah. So what's like replacement rate is like just over 2 is like to maintain, but to grow and grow at the rate that China kind of needs to grow, it's got to be significantly higher than that.
Yeah, it's weird. And the U.S., I'm sure, is going to be going through the same sort of stuff within the next decade or so.
Yeah, we already are. Like I think we're still slightly above replacement level, but I mean, all the Western European nations are all under, like they're at like 1.8 for their birth rate. So it's like, it's not sustainable. So that's why you're seeing the U.S. is kind of protected from it because we get so much immigration. Like we're buffered a little bit from it, but yeah, no, it's a big problem. Like Japan's having the problem because China, what's going to be bad is all of those people are going to age out, can't be in the workforce, and they're a massive burden on the welfare, healthcare, all that stuff. And I don't know if you can sustain if 1 billion people are not working because they're over the age of 65 or whatever, because they're gonna have a point pretty soon where it's like that.
Last thing before we wrap up this episode.
Okay.
Emmanuel Macron visited Louisiana. He was in New Orleans.
He's trying to reverse the Louisiana Purchase. He's working on a deal.
He's got his people looking around.
Buy back the entire Western United States.
But yeah, pretty interesting stuff. I think that's pretty much all the news. So
yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and wrap this
Sounds
one
good.
up.
Let's wrap it up.
This is the CTS Podcast, episode 63. Thank you for listening. This is where Henry says that's not the right episode.